Welcome back to The Conservative. Hi there, I'm Mike Lannon, your host, and we're coming to you by way of video on PEG TV. I hope you look at other shows that PEG TV presents. They've got some great lineups for you, and sometimes these shows are much better than what's being offered on cable TV and or the regular television. So many repeats, so many ads, so many boring things to look at on TV. So a lot of people come to PEG TV. There are 3 different channels, and take a look at what's going on in their communities. And this is a editorial show. This is a show that is opinion, and hope you stay by and see it, because as I tape this show for you, we're about 49 days away from the election, 7 weeks. And I want to talk again about the importance of paying attention to the intention of the election, okay? Very difficult to go to the next step in building a shared meaning when you have so many people out there telling so many falsehoods. Prevarications are all over the place. I was watching today, watching the would-be President Biden in Florida just flat out lying about Donald Trump and his desire to indicate to the American public that he hates the military. I mean, anybody with any common sense knows that when you have anonymous tips being presented by the press, that's anonymous nonsense, okay? Anybody that can't stand up and say in America, and it's getting more difficult, I must say, that can't stand up in America and say, hey, this is what I believe, this is what I heard, this is what I see, and stand up and take the pressure for the truth or a lie, doesn't deserve to be printed. And here the press is getting away again and again and again with anonymous tips. I have to tell you, because of my age, I've seen the press evolve negatively over the last number of years, at least for the last 50, and I'm more than 50 years of age. And I can tell you right now that I've watched it slide depressingly south. And south means into the world of lying and spinning the truth. When you're in a talk show and the host is a talk show host, then you know very soon the political bent that talk show host has. But at the news, that there should be no spin. It should be just the facts, and the facts should not be coming to you by anonymous sources. That's just bold-faced lying. Nobody should believe an anonymous source. And I've seen this for the last 50 years where the anonymous source is believed. Well, who are the anonymous source? That's the same as they said. Well, I've always asked this question when I hear they said, and you should too. Who's they? I want to know who those they people are, because it's easy to hide behind the they. I want to know, was it A, was it B, was it C? Those letters of the alphabet standing for a person. I want to know who the A was, who's B, who's C, who are they, what kind of credibility do they have? Are they, for instance, a convicted felon? Do they have skin in the game, meaning that they have a political side that they're on, and they're being paid to say what they're being they're being paid to say what it is that you're hearing as an anonymous source. And we should question that. And if we can't get who is telling these truths or lies, and I believe if you're an anonymous source, you're pretty much lying, then we should discount them. And so you take an anonymous source, and then you go to someone like Vice President Biden, who in Florida today is talking about the anonymous source, and he's spinning the truth. He's talking about all these things that Trump has basically said about the military. And anybody that knows anything at all knows darn well Trump would have to be the most stupid man in the world, which he's not, folks, to even make statements that Biden has said that he said. Okay, Mr. Biden, prove it. Darn it all, prove it. Because that's where we need to be, is let's prove that the President of the United States, Donald Trump, has said vicious things about dead military men. I don't believe it, never will believe it, unless you can prove it, not going to believe it. And most Americans, most reasonable Americans are not going to believe that, okay? And as I sit here today, chances are very, very good that the American press has not reported to you the fact that in the Middle East, okay, in the Middle East today, we have another peace treaty having been signed, and that would be the third national state in the Middle East that has now signed a peace treaty with the help of Donald Trump, given a lot of credit today by the administrator from Bahrain and from the UAE. Those two states have signed a peace agreement. They've signed a Abraham agreement and a diplomatic agreement. They signed 3 agreements this afternoon, unprecedented. And Donald Trump has looked at the Middle East differently than all the rest of the presidents in my lifetime. He's looked at the Middle East and he's got the Arabs to finally say, enough is enough. We need to have peace. All the other presidents up until this moment, including Mr. Biden, who was vice president and in charge of much of this, because that's why Obama got him into the vice presidency, because of his experience in world affairs, and John Kerry, those guys didn't put together a peace treaty. Why? Because they were trying to pay off the Iranians billions of dollars on skids so that they could have peace. And as soon as they paid that money, the Iranians went the opposite way. They caused more havoc with that money than we ever expected they would. What do you think? If you're going to pay your enemy billions of dollars, that enemy is going to be, well, how nice of you? No. They took the money and built more weapons and used used our money to literally take into, well, it wasn't all our money because some of that money was being held by the United States. It was Iranian money and it was being held. But anyway, we took that money and they bought terrorism with it. And we have always been thinking, okay, we'll appease the Palestinians. And in order to appease the Palestinians for peace, we have to go to Hamas. And Hamas has said over and over and over again that their deal is to destroy, under all circumstances, to destroy Israel. So there's not going to be a peace with Hamas. However, Donald Trump looked at it differently. He said, let's take each Arab state and see if we can come to the table and get some agreements going. So if we surround Hamas, the Gaza Strip, with all kinds of Arab nations who are opposed to any future wars with Israel, instead let's have peace, we can stop the Iranians who are funding Hamas. And so somewhere along the line, very soon now, the Iranians are going to have to come to the table, because I suspect, like the dominoes fall, even maybe before the election, we're going to see the Sudan. We might even, we've got overtures coming in right now from Saudi Arabia that they're interested in a peace deal. If we get 4 or 5 more nations over there to literally have a peace deal written with Israel, brokered by the United States, then the Hamas is going to fold. Iran is going to fold. Iran is on its heels right now with what Trump has done since he became president, when he put all those sanctions on. Their economy is in shambles. People are starving over there. They've got unrest in the streets. And that we've got to keep that pressure on, because otherwise we go the opposite way. We go the way of the last 5 presidents of the United States, which means both Republican and Democrat, that have taken us down the road of no peace and terrorism. So if we have Arabs, and today's peace deal with the UAE and with Bahrain basically talks about their responsibility to stopping terrorism in their area, and they've agreed that they're going to stop it. And it just makes sense, folks, that people all over the world, there's two ways to live. You can either live decently or you can live indecently. And most people don't want to live indecently. They want to live in a peaceful nation where they have an opportunity to make some money and to live their lives according to the way in which that government and the society, that civilization, wishes to live. It makes sense. So we don't want to watch the Middle East explode. It's a potential powder keg. So this is one time a president of the United States has actually gotten something done. People hate Donald Trump that are on the left, but watch his actions. I don't care what he says. You know, I've said this a million times. I've worked for 3 businessmen in my lifetime, And all three were tough. All three made big money, and all three were very much like Donald Trump. They weren't quite as effective as Donald Trump because he's the billionaire. These other guys were millionaires. But guess what? They all have the same thing. They want action. They want things to get done. They're not people that sit around and say, well, it'll be okay if you do it in a couple of months. No, they want it done yesterday. And all the men that I've ever worked for have always said, in the morning, I'll see you in the afternoon, and you better have an answer for what it is that I am asking you here in the morning. And my first boss that I ever worked for, when I was training managers for him, his meetings were at 3 a.m. And if you didn't show up at 3 a.m., you weren't working in the afternoon. By the time 3 p.m. came, you were gone. He sent the HR people to you and said, you're done. And so that was part of his plan. He was up early. And if you listen to anything about Donald Trump, most people say he's a workaholic. Most businessmen that I know that are successful are workaholics. They spend a lot of time making it happen. That's part of the criteria for their success. And if you read Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Effective People, that's what he talks about, is that they've got the 7 habits. I could jump down through those if you would want to hear them, but right now, the one you just need to know is that they are workaholics. They have a plan and they work that plan. And believe it or not, many of them have biblical tenets attached to their lives. They have a spiritual side of that triangle that I talked to you about many, many times. That base, and then you've got that right side and the left side, which is the intellectual side, which is for most people reading, writing, arithmetic, and on the other side you have that wonderful thing called the physical side. So most of these guys are doing something physically, they're doing something spiritually. It doesn't not necessarily have to mean that it's an organized religion. It means that they understand the difference between right and wrong, decency and indecency. Does that mean that they never swear? No. Does that mean that they never do something wrong? No. It means that they are humans just like everybody else, and they have and bring to the table personalities and characteristics that they've grown up with. What's wrong with that, folks? You know, you think about that and you believe the lies of the press and you believe the lies of the left, and you don't get to see this conservative view of where, look, the forgiveness in the soul is where, as Martin Luther King said, judge a man by what's in his heart. What is he able to do? Not necessarily by the words he speaks. Unbelievable. Most of you have always heard of Moses. Moses was a stutterer, by the way. His brother Aaron was the guy that did most of his talking. But he was famous. Gandhi hardly said a word. Okay, so you know what? And the opposite side of that is people that were great in their own right. But anybody want to ever see what President Grant was like as a general? Cigar smoking, whiskey drinking, swearing kind of a guy. You don't read that in history books, but that's the kind of guy he was. Guess what he knew how to do? Win wars. Anybody ever heard of a guy named Winston Churchill? When they got done World War II, the liberals threw him out. Here was a guy that saved England in World War II. A tremendously strong guy. Intellectually brilliant. What did he do? He did a lot of swearing, did a lot of drinking, did a lot of cigar smoking, okay? Did that make him a bad person? No, it just made him who he was. Let's look at Harry Truman. Same thing. Harry Truman was a no-nonsense kind of president. He's vilified today. People think, well, he dropped the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. If you read the history, he was concerned about Americans. He was concerned about the number of American boys and women, men and women that would be killed. If the war was fought hand-to-hand between the United States and Japan, it would have been on and on and on. And he was talking about millions, maybe 1 million men more losing their lives. And he had an opportunity to bring this war to a conclusion. So he dropped the big bombs. Gee, most of us would do that if we were in a position of power and we had to stop and think. But today, everybody wants to look at Harry S. Truman and say, oh, what a bad man he was. You don't hear that from the conservatives. You don't hear that from the people that think of this country on the right and think of the men and women that would have died. No, you hear it over there on the left. The same people that are screaming in the streets today, the same socialists / communists that are in the streets today trying to tear this country down. And don't let anybody kid you. These are organized, black hooded, black suited, at night, burning down Democratic controlled states, Democratic controlled cities. You don't hear of cities that are being controlled by conservative principles being burned down. Why? Because the conservative isn't going to allow that to happen. Okay, there's a big difference. Oh, God. It's like being a parent. If you're a conservative parent, you're not allowing your children, in general, there's always exceptions to every rule, but if you're a conservative parent, your children aren't running your household. You're running and you're telling them, you will honor your father and mother. Now, on the other side of that coin is the opposite. Oh, it's okay. I know you're my little child. Why don't you run the house? Here's $100. Go buy the milk and bread. Oh, go buy your drugs. Go ahead and live in the basement. You don't have to get a job. I'll take care of you the rest of your life. That's what they do, okay? And so therefore, that becomes a major problem because we aren't told to stand on our own 2 feet. I'll never forget coming home with my very first paycheck. I got out of college. I went to work. I came into my dad's house. I was living in the bedroom that I had lived in all through high school, went away to college, came back to my bedroom. Got my first paycheck. My dad's waiting at the door. I walked through the door and said, hey, son, let me look at your paycheck. I gave him the paycheck. I was proud of it. Let me take a look at it. He looked at it, folded it, put it in his pocket, and said, that's your rent. I left within the week. He took the entire paycheck, my rent. You know, he kept it. He was teaching me a very important lesson. Get out there and get on your own 2 feet. Did my father hate me? No. Did he love me? Yeah. He made a major point. Get out there and do what you have to do. And I've heard people say, oh, you can't do it today. It's too hard. It's too hard. It's too hard. I just talked to a woman, a single woman this past week who works 3 jobs to put the food on the table, to take care of her 2 children, to pay the rent, to do the things that she has to do. Boy, she's my kind of lady. I don't say it's not difficult. It's very, very difficult. She's a conservative. You listen to her, she is willing to stand on her own 2 feet and be self-reliant. I'll bet you dollars to donuts she could use some government help. No, she won't take it because she's going to work. I bet you if she had to have 4 jobs, she would do 4 jobs. I don't know. I don't even know how she does 3, okay? And that's the way people have to think if they want to be free. Now, the opposite of that is, well, the government will take care of me. The government will pay for my staying at home. That was the problem with the COVID checks. When you paid people more than they were making to stay at home, we've got that ended now. People are going back to work. Why? Because you have to have a full income in order to survive. Or you have to have 2 incomes or 3 incomes, whatever it takes to make sure you survive. Most people live at mom and dad's house simply because mom and dad allow it. Mom and dad have got to get stronger. We're in a generation right now that permits that, okay? And it's more promiscuous than I hate to even think about. I came up, I'm at the very end of the World War II families, the families that came out of the Depression, the very beginning of the baby boomers. The baby boomers allowed too much to occur through the 60s and 70s, and it's now coming back to haunt us because we didn't allow our children to stand on their own 2 feet. We babied them, we coddled them. Now listen, a lot of people maybe listen to this and say, that's not the way, I'm not saying everybody did this. Everybody, right or left of the political spectrum, has different ways in which they've raised their children. I'm just saying that we have allowed the family to be destroyed. And we've allowed it to be destroyed, in particular in the minority families, because you can read anywhere you want the fact that black fathers are not in the household. They're not there. And that makes a big, big difference. There's no question that in order to raise a child, you need a dad and you need a mother. Again, there's exceptions, okay? The lady I just talked about, she's a single mom, 2 children. She's working 3 jobs. She's making it happen. I don't know where the father is. None of my business to have asked her. I'd like maybe to have asked her, but it's none of my business to try to figure out. He could be in the picture. He could be paying alimony. He could be out of the picture and out of the country, out of the state. I don't know. Again, I only know what she's doing, and I have to applaud her for the fact that she's being self-reliant. She's not dependent upon the government. And those of you that believe that we should be dependent upon the government, you're listening to a bunch of lies, because ultimately those countries who have become totally dependent upon the government, the socialist/communist countries, they're broke, and people are starving in those countries. Go look at people in China. Go look at people in Russia. Go look at the unrest that are in those 2 countries. Go take a look at South America's country, Venezuela. Venezuela, in all of your lifetime that are watching this television show, you know that in Venezuela, at one time, it was one of the wealthiest South American nations in the world. As a matter of fact, it was in one of the top 10 GDP nations in the world because they have huge oil reserves. They don't even make the top 100 now. They're broke. They're done. And that's what happened because they allowed one person to stand up and lie to them, and they followed it like sheep off a cliff. Okay, you just have to be able to be smart enough, as the founding fathers said, to watch carefully your republic. Heard again the other day, somebody lying again that this is a democracy. This is a democracy. The United States government is not a democracy. It is a republic. It's run differently than a democracy. We've got to get over these terms and realize that we are a republic. That makes it a different kind of government. And by the way, it's the only republic in the world that is set up so it is run by the people. Okay? So we need to make sure we keep that. Ben Franklin said it the best when he came out of the convention hall and a woman asked him, what kind of government would he have? And he says, we have a republic, madam, if you can keep it. He didn't say, we keep it. You, meaning all of us across the board had to be involved in making sure that this government survived. That was the truth. And that's still the truth 245 years later. We still have this important piece of government. Don't let people think that somehow or another we're the worst nation in the world. That's what the left will have you believe. Even in this election right now, they're peddling that filthy lie that we're the worst nation that's ever lived. Go look it up. We as Americans give more to the world in contributions, privately gained, freely given contributions to the downtrodden, to the people of need in this world than any other nation before us, and in some cases, more than any other nations combined. So that's one part, okay? We're the most innovative nation. We're the most inventive nation, okay? We're losing that ground. We've allowed education to go the opposite way. We've allowed the NEA to look at us, and we've believed the lies of the NEA in the way in which we should teach children. There are not a whole lot of ways to have the brain learn, okay? We have a mind, we have a brain, and in that mind and brain, there's the ability to learn. We have a frontal lobe that allows us to go short term. We have a back lobe that allows us to retain and remember. So in the front, we can assimilate information. In the back, we can accommodate information. In the muddle, in between, we've got to be able to retrieve it. That's the key to learning. So, and that usually takes memorization, practice. It takes writing, the prehensive skills. It takes a lot of things to make it all work. But, oh no, we don't have to practice these things anymore. So we fall further and further behind in the reading and writing and arithmetic than the rest of the world. Now, why is the rest of the world trying to chase what we're doing? Because they want what we have. But you don't hear that from the press. You don't hear the fact that, for instance, you didn't hear, I suspect, this week that we, from COVID, we are 18% lower in our rate of COVID infections the death rate is way down, and yet the press is saying we've done a lousy job in 6 months' time. We haven't done a good job at all. And watch what happened over New York. New York begged this president of the United States to get help. He sent ventilators, not used. He sent a complete military hospital on a boat, not used. He built in the Javits Center a complete hospital, never used. What did the governor of New York do? He sent sick people, older people, at-risk people, back to nursing homes where he tripled the rate of deaths. New York still has the greatest number of deaths in the United States due to COVID. The press isn't reporting that. Instead, Governor Cuomo, he's the governor over there, he's writing a book on how great a job he did. He didn't do a great job. He didn't. Look at the number of deaths he has. He has the highest number. And yet the press will say, oh, it's growing rapidly in South Dakota and North Dakota. So I looked it up. No, it's not, okay? They've got a few more deaths than they had a month ago. A few more. We're not talking about thousands of people dying. Are we going to continue to have some deaths due to COVID? Absolutely, because we don't have the complete therapeutics in place yet, and we certainly don't have a vaccine, and we may not have a vaccine for a number of months, although the Trump administration, Donald Trump himself, optimistic, has believed that we just may get there before the end of the year. And of course, the press vilifies him through Bob Woodward, and he's out there selling a book, just like Bolton selling a book, all lies, all trumped up lies against Donald Trump, and again, anonymous sources or the spin on it, okay? Donald Trump tells Bob Woodward that he did downplay the COVID-19. He didn't want to cause a panic. Well, gee, most people, short-term memories gone. Most people in the listening viewership of this show will remember that back in March, the stores were empty of toilet paper. The stores were empty of certain food products. The stores were empty of paper towels. You couldn't buy certain things because the fear was running rampant. Now let's see. What would have happened if Donald Trump had come out and said, okay, guys, it looks to me like presently, here we are in March, with COVID starting to really run hard here, we are going to lose 3 million people. What do you think the panic would have been? Okay? Most of you don't remember the War of the World. The War of the World was a radio broadcast. And it was back in the late 30s or early 40s. And the broadcast was picked up over the radio by people coming in late, and they didn't hear the fact that this was a fictional tale being read by Orson Welles. By the time he got that tale halfway through, people were killing themselves, people were jumping off buildings. It caused a major panic in this country, people that could listen to the radio. We're not that much different than we were back there in those days. It doesn't take much to panic us and make us scared out of our minds, okay? So I think President Trump did the right thing. And of course, he's being vilified by the press, being vilified by Mr. Biden and the left because, and if you go back and look at the history, how Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Mr. Biden all vilified Donald Trump because early in January, by mid-January, he had shut down all incoming flights from China, wouldn't allow anybody from China come into this country because he didn't want them to come in with the COVID-19. And as soon as he found out that it was really running rampant in Europe, shut down the European travel. Smart move. But that did not mean that he had to go and tell everybody that China was going to bring 1 million deaths to us and the Europeans were going to bring the other 1 million, okay? That would have been a panic for sure. Now let's see what presidents of the United States did that and didn't tell the truth. Oh boy, let's see. The total truth and nothing but the truth. Franklin Delano Roosevelt didn't do it, not in Pearl Harbor in World War II. Matter of fact, if you listen to the conspiracy theory, Franklin Delano Roosevelt set up the bombing of Pearl Harbor. There's one to believe, not. And then you've got also Truman. He didn't tell everybody and broadcast the fact that he was going to drop a bomb and kill 50,000 to 80,000 people in one drop, and then again on Nagasaki. He didn't do that. Why? That would have caused a panic. That would have caused all kinds of problems worldwide. So you got two presidents from the left who didn't tell the truth. I'm glad they didn't. It's none of our business always to know exactly what it is that has happened. I'd like to get to the truth on Benghazi, wouldn't you? There's a lie. There's a lie done by the Clintons. I'd like to know about the false dossier that they produced on the Russian hoax that has haunted the president for 3.5 years, 4 years now. That's a lie. Anyway, this show has been about the lies. I could go on and on about this because I've got a list a mile long on the lies that are being told to you by the press and by the left. See you next time, guys. The time has gone by. Thanks for watching. Bye now.